My mother-in-law said I was too dumb for college. Then my NASA badge fell out. The graduation cap slipped sideways on my daughter's head as she hugged me, and I fixed it with the practiced hands of someone who'd adjusted hundreds of pieces of delicate equipment. Around us, the University of Colorado's stadium buzzed with thousands of families celebrating their children's achievements. But at our little cluster of seats, the atmosphere was thick with my mother-in-law's disapproval. Isabella's intelligence clearly comes from our side of the family, Margaret announced to the relatives she'd assembled for my daughter's big day. Thank God she inherited her father's brains. I kept my eyes on Isabella as she chatted with her fellow aerospace engineering graduates, their gold honor cords catching the May sunshine. She'd graduated summa cum laude, and I'd never been prouder. But to hear Margaret tell it, this was despite me, not because of me. You know, Margaret continued, loud enough for the families seated around us to hear. It's actually quite remarkable Isabella made it this far, considering Elena here never even finished college. Some people just aren't built for academic rigor. My husband James shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. He never did when his mother started one of her campaigns. After 15 years of marriage, I'd learned that defending myself only made things worse. So I sat there, clutching my purse, watching my brilliant daughter celebrate while her grandmother systematically diminished me to anyone who would listen. Maybe trade school would suit you better, Margaret sneered, turning to face me directly now that she had an audience. Not everyone has the brains for higher education. There's no shame in admitting limitations. The laughter that rippled through our section felt like individual slaps. Margaret's sister Patricia nodded knowingly. James's cousin Derek smirked into his program. Even some strangers in nearby rows seemed to be enjoying the show. Mom, James said weakly, today's about Isabella. Exactly, Margaret replied. Which is why I'm so relieved she overcame her disadvantages. When Elena dropped out of college to follow you around during your Air Force days, I thought for sure any children would suffer from that lack of intellectual ambition. Dropped out. That's what they all thought. That I'd been some lovesick girl who'd given up my education to be a military wife. The truth was so classified that even James had only learned parts of it after we'd been married for 5 years. Remember when Isabella was applying to colleges? Patricia chimed in. Elena suggested community college might be less pressure. Thank goodness Margaret stepped in to ensure she aimed higher. I hadn't suggested community college. I'd suggested she apply to schools with strong aerospace programs near certain facilities, knowing the internship opportunities that would be available. But to them, it had sounded like I was aiming low. The poor dear tried to help Isabella with her calculus homework once, Margaret told a newly arrived relative. Isabella had to correct her mother's work. Imagine being shown up by your own teenager. I had been testing Isabella, deliberately making errors to see if she could catch them. It was the same training method NASA used with junior flight controllers. But explaining that would have required explaining everything else. My phone vibrated with an encrypted message. I glanced at it briefly. Phoenix situation critical. Need you at JPL in 6 hours. The Mars Phoenix lander. My baby. 3 years of preparation, and now something was wrong. Are you even paying attention? Margaret's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. This is your daughter's graduation, and you're playing with your phone like a teenager. It's work, I said quietly. Margaret laughed, a harsh sound that carried across several rows. Work? You mean that little administrative job at the research facility? Filing papers for real scientists. Please. I'm sure they can handle putting documents in alphabetical order without you for 1 day. The families around us were fully engaged now, some pretending not to listen while obviously listening, others openly staring at the drama unfolding. I recognized the look on their faces, the same mixture of pity and superiority that Margaret had been cultivating for years. It's not, I started. Oh, let me guess, Margaret interrupted. There's a very important spreadsheet that needs updating? Or perhaps the real scientists need their coffee orders placed. More laughter. Isabella had noticed the commotion and was frowning in our direction. I gave her a small smile and wave, trying to signal that everything was fine. You know what the saddest part is? Margaret said, turning to address our entire section like she was giving a TED talk. Elena could have been somebody. When James first met her, she was at MIT. MIT. But she threw it all away. No degree, no career, just following my son from base to base like a lost puppy. That's enough, Mom, James said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm just being honest, Margaret replied. Someone needs to be. The girl had potential and wasted it. Now she answers phones for people who actually finished their education. My phone buzzed again. Then again. The emergency pattern that meant something had gone critically wrong with the Phoenix systems. I stood up, needing space to think. The Mars Phoenix lander had a malfunction in its soil analysis equipment, and we had a narrow window to fix it before we lost the entire mission. $300 million and 8 years of work hung in the balance. Where are you going? Margaret demanded. The ceremony isn't over. I need to make a call, I said, reaching for my purse. Unbelievable, Margaret announced to everyone. Her daughter graduates with honors, and she can't even sit still for the whole ceremony. This is what I mean about lack of intellectual discipline. Real academics understand the importance of these moments. I turned too quickly, my purse catching on the stadium seat. The contents spilled across the concrete: wallet, keys, emergency satellite phone, and my NASA badge, which skittered across the ground and landed face up at Margaret's feet. The badge gleamed in the afternoon sun, the NASA logo unmistakable, the text clear as day. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Mission Director, Mars Exploration Program. Security clearance, Level 5. The silence that followed was absolute. Margaret stared at the badge like it might bite her. Patricia's mouth fell open. Derek dropped his program. The families around us leaned in, suddenly reassessing everything they'd just witnessed. Doctor. Margaret's voice came out as a whisper. I bent to retrieve the badge, but James got there first. He held it up, reading it again as if the words might change. Elena, this says Mission Director. Yes, I said simply, taking the badge back. But you said you were an administrator, Patricia sputtered. No, I replied. You assumed I was an administrator. I said I worked in administration. Mission administration. I oversee the Mars Phoenix lander and 3 other active missions. Margaret's face had gone pale. That's impossible. You dropped out of college. I finished my bachelor's at MIT in 2.5 years, I said evenly. Then completed my master's and PhD in aerospace engineering through a joint program with MIT and Caltech while James was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base. The following him around, you keep mentioning? I was working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Air Force Base placement was deliberate so I could be near JPL. But, Margaret's voice shook, you never said anything. My work is classified. Most of what I do requires security clearance that less than 200 people in the country have. I've been managing Mars missions for the past 12 years. The crowd around us had gone completely still. Someone a few rows back whispered, the Phoenix lander? That's hers. I looked at my phone again. 3 more urgent messages. The malfunction was getting worse. The homework, James said suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. Isabella's homework. You weren't getting it wrong. I was training her to think like a flight controller, I confirmed. To spot errors that could destroy missions. Isabella's internship at NASA this summer? She'll be working on my team. Your team? Margaret's voice was barely audible. I run a team of 60 engineers and scientists. We're currently managing 4 active missions and preparing for the Mars sample return mission that launches in 18 months. Isabella had made her way over, having noticed the commotion. Mom, is everything okay? There's a situation with Phoenix, I told her. The soil analysis arm isn't responding to commands. Isabella's eyes widened. She knew exactly what that meant. The arm that's supposed to collect the permafrost samples? Mom, that's the whole mission. Which is why I need to get to JPL, I said, already calculating drive times to the airport. Wait, Derek said, finding his voice. You're telling us that while we've been sitting here mocking you for being uneducated, you've been running missions to Mars. Not just Mars, Isabella said, pride evident in her voice. Mom's team also manages 2 asteroid reconnaissance missions and the Europa Clipper preparation. She literally wrote the book on autonomous navigation systems for deep space exploration. The book. Patricia squeaked. Autonomous Navigation in Deep Space, a Practical Guide, Isabella recited. It's the standard textbook in advanced aerospace programs, including mine. I watched Margaret process this information, her worldview crumbling in real time. The woman who'd spent 15 years telling everyone I was too stupid for college was learning that I'd been teaching college courses at Caltech as a guest lecturer. But you let me, Margaret started, then stopped. All these years, you let me say those things. Yes, I said simply. I did. Why? I looked at her for a long moment. Because my work speaks for itself. Because I don't need validation from someone who judges intelligence by conventional markers. And because every minute I spent defending myself from your insults would have been a minute I couldn't spend ensuring that humanity successfully explores other planets. My phone rang. The caller ID showed NASA Administrator Dr. Vasquez. The voice on speaker was clear enough for everyone to hear. We need you at JPL immediately. Phoenix is critical. We're sending a helicopter to your location. Helicopter? James said weakly. The mission is valued at $300 million, I told him. They are not going to let traffic delay the fix. Indeed, in the distance, we could already hear the distinctive sound of rotor blades. The crowd around us started pulling out phones, recording as a NASA helicopter descended toward the university's landing pad. Mom, Isabella said, can I come? I mean, I know it's classified, but… You have clearance as of Monday, I told her. Your internship was always going to be with Mission Control. Might as well start now. As we gathered my things, Margaret finally found her voice again. Elena, I owe you an apology. I paused, looking at the woman who'd made every family gathering an exercise in endurance. No, Margaret. You owe yourself an examination of why you were so eager to believe the worst about me. Why it made you feel better to think I was beneath you. But I could have known, she said desperately. If you'd just told us. I told you I worked in aerospace. You decided that meant secretary. I told you I had continued my education. You decided that meant night school certificates. Every assumption you made was a choice to see me as less than. The secrecy of my work didn't create your contempt, it just revealed it. The helicopter was landing now, drawing crowds from all over the stadium. University security was creating a perimeter. For what it's worth, I said, pulling on my JPL jacket. Isabella did inherit her intelligence from both sides of the family. James is brilliant in his own way. But she also inherited something else from me, the ability to let her work speak louder than her critics. Isabella and I headed toward the helicopter. At the last moment, I turned back to see Margaret standing among the crowd of stunned relatives, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her. Oh, and Margaret. I called back. That little administrative job you kept mocking? My salary is 4 times what James makes. Has been for years. The house you love visiting? I bought it. The cars. Mine. James is successful, and I'm proud of him. But your son didn't marry down. He married so far up he needed a security clearance just to know what his wife does for a living. As the helicopter lifted off, Isabella squeezed my hand. That was epic, Mom. That was overdue, I corrected, pulling up the Phoenix telemetry on my tablet. Now, let's go save a Mars mission. Below us, the graduation ceremony continued, but I knew the gossip would spread like wildfire. Margaret Williams, the woman who'd spent 15 years calling her daughter-in-law too dumb for college, had just learned that same daughter-in-law was Dr. Elena Vasquez, one of the most respected minds in space exploration. My phone buzzed with a text from James. My mother is crying. My cousins are Googling you. The entire stadium is talking about the NASA helicopter. Also, I'm sorry. For all of it. I texted back, Phoenix first. Marriage counseling later. Because that was the truth. I could forgive James for his weakness, his inability to stand up to his mother. But I couldn't forget it. And Margaret. She'd learned that the woman she'd dismissed as intellectually inferior had been literally reaching for the stars while she'd been reaching for insults. As we flew toward JPL, Isabella pulled up the Phoenix data on her tablet, already working the problem. My daughter, the aerospace engineer, following in footsteps Margaret never knew existed. Mom, Isabella said. Thank you for not letting her make you small. Baby, I replied, watching California blur beneath us. Small people can't direct missions to Mars. And somewhere behind us, at a graduation ceremony that would be remembered for all the wrong reasons, Margaret Williams was learning that the hard way.